This is the all-new 2025 Toyota 4Runner Limited, and that is a Toyota Land Cruiser. Which of these is best for go-anywhere full-time four-wheel drive? We're going to find out right now on Driving Sports TV. This episode of Driving Sports TV is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road. Click the link below to save 20% off your new membership using the code DSTV. For 2025, the Toyota 4Runner is finally all new. Hallelujah! And with this new generation, it also shares a platform with the new Toyota Tacoma, Toyota Tundra, and the new Land Cruiser. The trim we have here is a 2.4-liter turbocharged Limited. That means this is the cheapest way you can get Toyota's full-time four-wheel drive system using Toyota's advanced Torsen-based setup. The model we have here features a number of upgrades, including power running boards, third-row seating, roof crossbars, a cargo mat, and the Tow Tech package. Retail price, as you see it here, you're looking at $62,875 including destination. Considering you can get a 1958 edition Land Cruiser for around $57,000, why wouldn't you just get one of these? Well, it turns out there's actually quite a lot different between the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser. Here in the US, the hybrid versions of the 4Runner do not get a third row seat option because back there they put a battery instead of the seats. Same issue with the Land Cruiser because that is only available with a hybrid Turbo 4. So if you really want 3 rows of seats and you want full-time four-wheel drive and you want a 4Runner, this is your only option. With the seats up, you get 12.1 cubic feet behind the third row, 44.8 cubic feet behind the second, and 84.4 with all the seats folded flat. With all the seats down, can you sleep in it? Actually, it's not bad. It's not completely flat, but they have at least elevated the floor uniformly. And yeah, I got room back here. 6'1", and I fit. The Land Cruisers we get here all have hybrid powertrains. That means there's some intrusion in the cargo area with the batteries, but I still find the cargo area quite usable on the Land Cruiser. Also, Toyota does include a 2400 watt inverter in their hybrid models, which gives us real power options in the back. This 4Runner gets the older standard AC power option, with 400 watts when parked and 100 watts maximum while driving. Of course, this being a 4Runner means it has its trademark rear roll-down window, which is pretty cool. The Land Cruiser gets a pop-out design. Under the hood of this 4Runner is a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with direct and port injection. This is the same engine found in the Toyota Tacoma. In fact, there is a lot of copy-paste between the Tacoma and this new 4Runner. Everything from powertrains to interiors to even some of the styling. The setup we have here produces a peak 278 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. That is a significant improvement over the old 4Runner's outgoing 6-cylinder engine. This limited trim has a dual-range transfer case along with full-time four-wheel drive. The Limited and upscale Platinum trims are the only way to get Toyota's advanced Torsen system on this new 4Runner. All other trims get part-time setups. Yes, even the TRD Pro and the Trail Hunter. EPA rates economy at 20 miles to the gallon in town and 24 on the highway. Here in the United States, the new Land Cruiser is only available with a single powertrain. It is a 2.4-liter turbocharged engine mated to a hybrid electric motor. What that means is that this produces 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. Now it channels all of that through a full-time four-wheel drive system with a Torsen center differential. It also has a rear locker as standard, and because this is a first edition, it has the stabilizer bar disconnect option, as well as MTS and crawl control systems. Now let's look at the second row. I have room for my knees, I got room for my head because of this cutout. Down here I get vents as well as AC and USB-C sockets. Over here I get an extra cup holder, JBL sound, keep hitting my head, and a fold down armrest. Not my favorite second row, but it does work. Actually, I have more headroom here, I have more leg room, It's more comfortable. I do not get an AC power socket back here. Instead, I just get a 12 volt, a couple USB-Cs, and of course over here, I do get a fold down armrest with cup holders. Oh, one thing that my kids really like about the Land Cruiser is that the vents are right up here, which they prefer to being down there. This front seat is so much like a new Tacoma. I have to look back there to make sure there's no bed. I have the big 14-inch display, which is of course an option on certain trims, but it is standard here on this Limited. I also get a leather wrapped steering wheel. I have physical controls for my aircon, including dual zone up front here. No climate controls in the second row, however. Power seats wrapped in leather. I get both heating and cooling in the seats, as well as a heated steering wheel. That's a nice touch. Up here, I get a camera in the rear view mirror. This, of course, comes standard with the massive 14-inch display, which was an option on my TRD off-road Tacoma. Here it is standard, and it's a gloriously large display, especially good for showing maps, like onX Off-Road, which happens to be a sponsor of this video. But I'm not going to give you a full read. Just go check out onX, save 20% using the code DSTV. Now, for this interior, I do like the materials. We have this little pattern in the dash here to kind of break up the plastics. Down here, we have matte black, no piano, which is fantastic. We also have the grip there. We have high output USB-Cs, and I also have a place to put my phone for wireless charging. And this, of course, supports both wireless Apple CarPlay as well as wireless Android Auto. Now, down here, you'll note there's some stuff missing because this is not an off-road focused trim. Doesn't mean you can't take it off-road, but just be aware that you do not have a rear locker, you do not have crawl control, you do not have multi-terrain select. This is as basic gets. Now, does it have A-Track, which is the original traction control system? Now, normally you would find a button up here, but no. With this one, when you put it into 4 low, it'll, of course, lock the center torsion diff, it'll move the transfer case into the low range, and it'll also turn on A-Track. We're going to play with that in a little bit. What else? Oh yeah, JBL speakers. Boom, 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 boom. So we got the JBL sound system here. One thing I love about full-time four-wheel drive is the fact that I just don't have to worry about what mode my drivetrain is in. I'm going to have grip. So often in a Toyota Tacoma, I roll off the gravel, I'm on the street, I make one turn, I'm like, oh right, I'm in 4 high with the center transfer case engaged. You know, it's just one less thing you gotta worry about. And away we go. You know, that's not bad power-wise. It's definitely faster than the old 6-cylinder that came on the previous generation 4Runner. And of course, it also has better economy, better emissions. It's just overall a better option for 2025. Let's start with a 0 to 60, see how quick this thing really is. So I'm going to come to a stop. I am going to put the drive mode into Sport S Plus, which is the maximum drive mode. That's going to give me the quickest throttle, the most power. I don't know. It does stuff. It also adjusts the variable suspension. 3, 2, 1, and go. A little slow to start. 30, 40, 50, 60. That's pretty good. I mean, for a body-on-frame mid-size SUV, that is plenty for most people. Pull out to the highway, and now this is a good time to talk about drive modes. This one has a lot of them. We have Eco, Comfort, Normal, Sport S, and Sport S Plus, as well as a custom setting. And they touch on a number of different components in this vehicle, but the most important one is the adaptive variable suspension. Yes, this actually has adaptive suspension. It'll vary the damping rate depending on road surfaces. That is a major distinction in the Limited 4Runner versus the Land Cruiser, because the Land Cruiser just has a fixed position, fixed damper setup. And there's something I want to address right off the bat, and they talk about it in the press release. This is a street-oriented variable damper setup, with Sport S Plus letting you know just how many cracks you are driving over, because you can feel every single one of them. So right now I'm in Sport S Plus, and yeah, the throttle is more aggressive. I mean, power is plentiful in this thing. Honestly, I think most people would be happy with the Turbo 4. Personally, I do like to have a little bit more power, and I really like that 2400 watt inverter. So for me, the Land Cruiser hybrid setup is just a better one. But that said, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this Turbo 4. It is nice. The only big question we have is long-term reliability. I mean, are the bearings going to go out on the turbo? You're introducing some additional componentry, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, the only way we can answer that question is time. Yeah, the suspension is a bit firm. Let's go ahead and dial it back to normal and see how that improves things. It's a little rough through there. Yeah, it takes the edge off a little bit. Still a little bit on the firm side though. So if you live in an area with really rough roads, this may not be for you. It just may not be, which is fine. Of course, this new powertrain is mated to an 8-speed automatic, and it does fine. I can just slot it over for sport shifting if I want to manually select my gears, although in a 4Runner, not something I usually want to do unless I'm braking down a steep incline, or it's just, I don't know. There are a few scenarios. I'm not going to say I'm never going to use it, but it's a limited use thing for me. And that's kind of one of the interesting things about this Limited. So you have variable suspension, which is street oriented. You have the ability to manually pick your own gears. These are all the things that you expect in a sporty car, not necessarily a body-on-frame SUV. Yet, here we are. It might win over people that wouldn't otherwise consider a 4Runner, but they like the extra space, they like the visibility, they like the looks, and they want something that just feels a little sportier. But you're not going to get past the fact that this actually is a body-on-frame SUV. It still drives like a truck, just like a truck with fairly firm suspension. That's all. But those caveats aside, I think this is actually a really nice rig. I put on the brakes. I don't have that nosedive that I used to get in the old 4Runner. They've improved geometry, and of course the suspension on this is nicer than on my old TRD Off-Road 2021 that I used to own. Oh, and then there's this interior. I love the digital gauge cluster. It's super configurable. You can either go with a single dial, multiple dials. It's just a really nice cluster. And I'm really glad that Toyota has basically been rolling it out to pretty much every vehicle they make these days, at least on the upper trims. Now, as for the rest of this, we have nice physical buttons down here. We have big chonky dials for the climate as well as for the volume control. And then we have hard buttons on the left here to control some of the safety stuff. Overall, it is just a really nice experience because you have physical buttons where you need them, where you want them, but then you also have this interface up here, which is absolutely fantastic, especially for maps. If you've ever watched any overlanding videos or people who are really hardcore into overlanding and they've built a rig for overlanding, very often you'll see an iPad mounted somewhere in the vehicle that runs maps. Well, here it is. You just don't need to add another device because now you have like the ultimate mapping solution right here built in. And of course, when it comes time to use the camera systems, having a big view to be able to show you all the different angles is just phenomenal. The seats, they've been pretty comfortable. Not quite as comfortable as my Land Cruiser, I have to say. The Land Cruiser seats feel different than any other Toyota I've been in. At the time of filming, I actually have more than 16,000 miles logged on this Land Cruiser. I have driven it so many places, including Seattle to Texas and back. So I have some strong opinions about this Land Cruiser, and I really like it. Now, a lot of people diss the Land Cruiser because it's not what they have come up with in their head as to what is the perfect Land Cruiser. But I got to tell you, I love this vehicle. It's not only incredibly comfortable, it also is incredibly capable. And that is because of the stuff down here. This comes fully loaded with the multi-terrain select system. We have crawl control plus hill descent control. I can manually lock my center torsion differential as well as my rear differential. And because this is an upper trim, I can also disconnect my front stabilizer bar. Of course, both the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner have independent front suspension and solid axles in the rear. The solid axle in the back is great for articulation. Independent front suspension, not so much. So what they do with the upper trims of the Land Cruiser is they give you the option to disconnect the stabilizer bar, which gives you more motion up front. Not only does it give you more reach for better grip, it also reduces head toss on complicated courses. Now, if you get a 1958 edition, you do not get the stabilizer bar. You also do not get the multi-terrain select system. You only have A-Track in 4-load, just like in the 4Runner. But you do, in the 1958, get the rear locker. So you do get some really nice stuff with the 1958, in addition to the fact that it just has way more power than that turbocharged 4Runner. Of course, you can get the Limited with the hybrid system, which is going to bring them a little bit more in parity, but the Limited does not have all the off-road accessories. If you want that, you gotta get the Land Cruiser. And it can be confusing, but I think once you figure it out, it just makes sense. Also, Land Cruiser, higher roofline. There's more room in here for tall folks. I could wear a cowboy hat in here, no problem. You don't want to see me in a cowboy hat, but if I wanted to, I could wear a cowboy hat, not just in the front row, but also in the second. Like the 4Runner, this one has the full-time four-wheel drive system with a 40-60 torque split using a torsion center differential. That is cool. Unlike the Limited 4Runner that we have here, this one has the turbo hybrid system. That means this has way more horsepower and torque. But it's one of those things where if you compare the numbers, it doesn't seem as impressive as it is in daily use. Let me demonstrate. So I'm going to come to a stop here. I'm going to go ahead and put it into sport. And we're just going to mash the throttle. Hit it. And out of the gates, picks up 40, 50, and 60. So, you know, the 0 to 60, it's faster than the non-hybrid, but it's really not that exciting. If you want exciting, you want to go more with the twin turbo 6 setup that is in the GX 550, which is another relative of these vehicles. This vehicle, its numbers betray it. It's actually way quicker in day-to-day driving situations. You're never wanting for power, whether you're just, you know, driving around town, whether you're trying to make a highway pass around a slow semi, or you're towing stuff. This powertrain is actually really, really great to live with. It's unfortunate that things like 0 to 60 times don't really show you that. And it really comes down to how they've managed the torque curve with this electric assist. It just makes it a pleasure to drive. Let's talk about the interior on this one. Yes, this has the smaller display compared to the 4Runner, but I actually like this setup. It is big enough. In Apple CarPlay, I can do the side-to-side view with Onyx Maps of my primary, which looks fantastic. And it also looks really good with the surround view camera system. The digital gauge cluster is the same as the 4Runner, no difference there. When it comes to the steering wheel, I love the steering wheel on this Land Cruiser. It is like a nice leather, and it just feels so good in hand. And yes, like the 4Runner, this is heated, so you get toasty fingers in the wintertime. The seats in this vehicle are more comfortable than the 4Runner. I don't know what magic they've put into these seats, but they are phenomenal. Like, I just drove from Seattle to Texas and back again a few weeks ago. I could get right back in and do it again. I have absolutely, like, I cannot say enough nice things about these seats. They are probably some of the most comfortable seats I've ever been in, and that's without massage units. They are heated and cooled, just like in the limited version of the 4Runner. When it comes to switchgear, I actually like the switchgear in the Land Cruiser here better than the 4Runner. The 4Runner uses the Tacoma's kind of metallic looking plastics with the knurled edges, and that's nice. It's easy to grip and push, but these ones I think feel more sophisticated. They have a nice click to them, and they're actually multiple pieces that they assembled. So this is actually a more difficult design to manufacture, and I think it's good. Everything's where it should be. It's all, for the most part, pretty clear. I don't know why they put the video view button way down below here, but it's little details like that are not a deal killer. And then of course, both this and the 4Runner come with JBL premium sound. This one has more speakers than the 4Runner does, but both systems sound fine, for a premium system. And then the last thing I want to touch on is headroom. This has miles of headroom because of course the roofline is actually a couple inches taller than on the 4Runner. That makes this just so great for any sized adult. Anybody, my wife is not terribly tall and she fits in here just fine and she can see everything just fine. I'm 6'1", legs torso proportionate, and I have tons of room for my head, even in the second row. I can fit as an adult in the second row with no head bump. 4Runner can't say the same thing. So yeah, overall, I absolutely love this Land Cruiser. In fact, I love it so much, I was supposed to trade it in when I bought my 2025 Toyota Tacoma long-term tester for driving sports, and I didn't. I kept this one. So we'll see how long I keep it for, but just be aware that I kept it because I don't want this to go away. And this is a first edition, which they only made the first year. So if I get rid of this, I won't ever be able to buy one of these again. At least not for a reasonable amount of money. One problem with pretty much all of the modern Toyota truck-based vehicles is their fuel tanks are too small. This has a little bit more than 17 gallons. It only gets me around 260 miles of range, which frankly is not enough. It should be larger. The 4Runner has a slightly larger fuel tank, but I still think people are going to complain about the tank size. Really, honestly, give me a couple more gallons. Now, if you do the math, you're like, oh, well, that's over 300 miles of range. Yes, true. But nobody fills up their fuel tank when it is literally on zero. You typically keep 1 to 2 spare gallons in there before you fill. So I think it's a little disingenuous to say, oh, it's actually 300 miles when let's go off the refill calculator instead, because you're gonna refill before you've completely run out of gas. Because that would be ridiculous to run it down to E and then run out those 2 extra gallons. No, nobody's going to do that. So effectively, all you really have is a 15 gallon or 14 and a half gallon tank in this thing, which is not good. And then finally, suspension. The suspension on this vehicle to me is pretty much perfect. It is soft. It is supple. It's not going to let me blast through the corners like it's on rails. It's a Land Cruiser. Let's be reasonable about the expectations here. And I'll say that this suspension, I get out of any other vehicle that I've driven in months, and I get into this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice. It's comfortable, it's subtle, it's smooth. Is it too soft for street? Well, no. Is it too soft for blazing through the corners? Yeah, it's a little rolly, sure. But again, use case for this vehicle. If I want to drive a sports car, I will drive a sports car. I'm not going to drive my Land Cruiser like a sports car. So let's not say, oh, it's too soft, because honestly, this is how you drive. This is nice. Now, do you need the fancy variable suspension that's in the Limited? I will take the simpler design every day. That is as nice as this setup. Now, when it comes down to amenities inside, the Land Cruiser 1958 is pretty cheap on the inside. There's no getting around that. The plastics on the side are hard. The screen is ridiculously small for 2025, and even the gauge cluster is smaller, which I'm kind of surprised. Just put in a decent gauge cluster, guys. But when it comes to the driving of it and the capability of it, that's all still there. So I don't typically recommend the 1958. I recommend going up to the standard Land Cruiser because it's just going to get you a nicer experience overall. Now, as for my first edition, yes, these are soft. They feel great. There's no complaints about materials anywhere in this vehicle. This is a luxury off-roader. It is. But it's priced accordingly too. But keep in mind, it's still cheaper than the last 200 series that they used to sell here. And it's basically the same size. Yeah, so don't come at me with this whole like, oh, this isn't a real Land Cruiser. I mean, what do you want a Land Cruiser to be in 2025? You want the old 200 series? Well, fine. Go find an old 200 series and spend $100,000 on a nicely kept one. Personally, I'd rather spend less, get better tech, a more comfortable ride, and a more powerful powertrain that's also more efficient. But how about when the road ends and the trail begins? Should you move up to a Land Cruiser, or is the 4Runner here a better choice? So we just took the Land Cruiser out. Between the two, I do prefer the Land Cruiser. I don't need the variable suspension, and I prefer the softer setup in the Land Cruiser. Plus, honestly, the seats are just a little bit more comfortable in that one. Yes, this has the larger display, and a lot of people will like that, but that display is pretty good too. It's a little more subtle, a little more sophisticated looking, but keeping in mind, mine is a first edition. So if you go with the 1958, you're gonna get a much smaller central display and a smaller gauge cluster too. If you wanted to build a first edition, they don't exist anymore because that was only for the first year of production. You can buy a Land Cruiser, add the premium package, and then add on some options. You're probably going to price to pretty close out to, you know, what the first edition was, probably low to mid 70s. But, you know, you don't have to go that far. You don't. It's, you know, pick your own adventure. Right, so now we're going to take this through some of the courses here at our Peninsula Proving Grounds. This is, of course, where we built a number of trails to test out vehicles. Now, we have to keep something in mind with this 4Runner. This is a street-oriented 4Runner. Let's not pretend it's something, you know, built to conquer the Himalayas. No, this has a massive air dam on the front. It is removable, but we're not allowed to remove componentry off of the vehicles that the manufacturers provide us for testing. Up front, it does have a composite skid plate, but that's not something you want to put all the weight of the vehicle on. It is good for deflecting rocks, however. And then, of course, there's the wheel tire package on it. These are street all-season tires. They are not for off-road, and they're wrapped around 20-inch wheels. Now, my first edition Land Cruiser actually came with 20-inch wheels, but the tires were so bad as soon as the pavement ended, I took them off immediately and I put on the Falcon Wild Peaks. So obviously I've chosen my own adventure with that one. I think a lot of people, like even when I bought my 4Runner back in the 2021 TRD Off-Road, I used to own one of those 4Runners, previous generation. The tires it came with were the dualer tires, and those are awful. They're trash. So I basically took those off immediately too. I think Toyota knows that if you're going to be taking any of these vehicles off-road, you're immediately going to go buy your preferred tire. It's just a fact of life with, and if you look at the forums for 4Runner or for Land Cruiser, that is like the #1 topic. Like, what tires should I do? How big can I stuff under this vehicle? By the way, fun point of fact, you can stuff 35s under the Land Cruiser with just a wee bit of rubbing. 33s clear, no problem. Okay, let's do this. I think we're going to start with just a rough road and see how this suspension deals with it. So I'm going to go to Comfort, which should be the smoothest setting. Oh, actually, you know, it's really noticeable when you switch the drive modes on this. They are actually really noticeable. Okay, Comfort. How smooth can you be? Okay, I'm getting a little jostled here. Oh, yeah. You know, it's not bad for what it is. It's definitely a street-oriented setup, but you know, I can deal with that. That's kind of not too bad. Actually, with drive mode Comfort, this thing is actually really comfortable. They did a great job with the suspension setup. Rough roads are one thing, but to be able to go through moguls, that's something else. I think this vehicle will actually do okay because it does have that solid axle in the back. So in this test, look for articulation as those wheels push up, push down, or don't. Now, in terms of off-road settings, I am going to go ahead and put this into 4 low. I don't really need to be 4 low for this, but it's more for demonstration purposes. With 4 low engaged, it does lock the center torsion differential, and it should also engage the A-Track advanced traction system for off-road use. What that'll do is use wheel braking to shift power left to right, and because this doesn't have a rear locker, it'll emulate lockers on both the rear and the front. Let's do it. The road conditions are actually pretty dry today, so there's not going to be any mud to slip on, which is a little unfortunate, but you know, we deal with the weather that we are given. Oh, camera view. I can actually turn on a camera view here. It is not a proper trail view though, but I can, let's see, there. I can isolate my view to kind of help me through here. Okay, so now this is where we're going to look for those wheels lifting up and putting down. And that A-Track wheel brake in action. So how's articulation looking on the outside? It does feel like we're lifting. Yeah, we're definitely lifting. So I'm now going to ease forward and you'll see the A-Track kicking in. I can hear it doing its work. And through it we go. Yeah, no problem, of course. Now we have the sand slide. It's going to be a little steeper. We're going to do a little bit of a tilt, really lift that rear wheel. Especially as we go, we're going to go full into the ditch here. We're going to listen for that plastic piece in the front to see if it's going to hit. Definitely going to lift that rear wheel up. Actually, let's stop and take a look at what we have here. Yeah, that's actually pretty good reach. It's touching all the way down there. Probably lifted up a second back there, but not too bad. And this wheel is compressed up. You can really see how here, how the whole axle moves back and forth, whereas on the front it's independent. So one wheel can move and the other wheel can move. But this is really good for articulation. So you might be asking, if solid axle is so good, why don't they put it on the front too? Well, the problem with it is that if you disrupt one wheel because of going through a ditch or an expansion joint or something like that, it disrupts the other wheel as well, where independent doesn't. It doesn't care what's happening between the different wheels. So that's actually better for comfort and for overall drivability. So this is kind of a mix of the two. Of course, if you get like a Jeep Wrangler or something, that will have solid axle front and rear because it is first and foremost an off-road machine. Right, drive, lift up through here, a little more tilt. Definitely lifting up some wheels here, but I kind of expected that. And away we go. We're going to dip our nose down into a big hole on the right here. Lift that rear suspension. Let's take a look at it. Oh yeah, we finally lifted it. Oh no, it's actually touching still. Man, I always forget how good the articulation is on these. Continue on. Now this is where you'll really see A-Track kicking in. I can hear it. Sounds like somebody's opening a very creaky door. And drag in the back? Nope, because we have a good departure angle. And this is where we really can use the cameras as we're following the tracks here. It's a very narrow ridge. Back gets around and down we go. So does this have automatic hill descent control while we're in 4 low? No, but because we're in low range, we can slot over to manual select on the shifter and then just compression brake down. I think a lot of people, when they see that this has a full-time 4-wheel drive setup, they kind of wonder, why do I even need high 4 and low 4? Well, what those do is they lock the center diff, which will basically effectively split power 50-50. That's oversimplified, but just work with me here, which is what you want to do when you're off-road. Also, if you go into 4 low, it then engages what's called the A-track system. That is an advanced off-road traction control system that will use wheel braking on individual wheels, front and back, to shift power. Now, when we went through with 4 low, you saw that happening, and I could hear it inside the cab. It's very quick, so it is easy to miss, but it is happening. Now let me show you what the difference looks like if you just go in using the full-time 4-wheel drive setting. So here we go. So the throttle is going to be a lot more aggressive because we don't have that gear reduction that you get with 4 low. Obviously that's no problem, but now let's see what happens in the moguls. Go ahead. Like before, look for articulation and especially look for wheel braking happening, which is shifting power around or not. So I'm just going to go slow so that we're stressing the system. Obviously, there we are. Lift the wheel back a little bit. Now at this point, I'm putting throttle and it's trying to move forward and it's surging, but it's not getting anywhere. So now let's go ahead and switch it into 4 high. It shows me locked in the center diff. I'm just going to add some throttle. Oh, A-track kicks in. So A-track actually works both in 4 high and 4 low. That's interesting. So I'm just going to go through this in full-time 4-wheel drive because I think we're probably okay on this. This is actually pretty easy when it's not wet, so long as all the articulation requirements are met, which this vehicle does just fine. So I think, you know, this Limited is surprisingly capable, and it's simply because of the secret weapon called A-track. A-track is extremely capable. Anybody who has an older Toyota Tacoma or 4Runner knows this. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this Limited trim on the new 4Runner. The power is plentiful for most people. The one thing that I think is kind of a little bit of a miss here is the fact that we don't have any of the off-road stuff. It's like, can't you just give me a rear locker, please? They really, really wanted to stress the fact that this is not the off-road trim. But I really feel like they could just go just a little bit further. But that said, if you do want full-time 4-wheel drive, and you want a rear locker and all the other off-road goodies, well, of course, Toyota does offer the new Land Cruiser. So now let's check that out and see how it is in these conditions. So now I'm back in the Land Cruiser, and we're going to see how well this vehicle does with a deeper toolbox when it comes to off-roading. Same approach speed, around 23, and yeah, I mean, it's a rough road. I just like this setup. You know, it's so comfortable and smooth, even over incredibly harsh surfaces. It really does a great job of taking that initial bite off of the impacts. It's just such a good setup. Of course, the Limited is limited when it comes to off-road capabilities. This Land Cruiser is not. It is not limited at all. What we have here are just a plethora of options. And I'm going to go ahead and switch it into 4 low, just like I did in the Limited. Immediately, we get our surround view camera system in a trail mode, which the Limited does not offer. And then beyond going into 4 low, I can also choose to lock my center diff. With the Limited, it's automatic. So what other things can we do here? Well, I do have a stabilizer bar disconnect mechanism. I'm going to go ahead and punch that because it is an option on the Land Cruiser. This one it came with. And then, of course, rear locker. You know what? I'm not going to turn the rear locker on quite yet. First, I'm going to go around this corner, and then I'm going to turn it on. Actually, let's go ahead and turn off that center diff lock, too, while I'm at it, because I don't need it yet. Going to turn in here. Now, obviously, yes, this has more aggressive all-terrain tires, but grip really wasn't the issue with this test. It was really the ability to shift power around, because the issue is when a wheel is off the ground, it can't move the vehicle forward. See, so I was in 4 low there, but without that center diff locked, and it was super smooth. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch the rear, can't put the rear diff on. I got to put my center diff on first. So I'm going to put my center diff on. It's going to lock. And then I'm going to lock my rear diff. Hasn't engaged yet. Still engaging, still engaging. Usually you have to roll a little bit to get them to lock in. And now at this point, with that rear locker on, when I lift a wheel, it's not going to spin a tire at all. So I'm proactively addressing the situation. So there's no wear and tear on the trail. There's no wear and tear on the vehicle. It just rolls forward. It's like, it basically is a massive upgrade for people that do a lot of off-road. Do you need it to get through that once in a while trail? Well, no. But if you're off-roading a lot, a rear locker, so good. Okay, and then going over sand slide, I can demonstrate another feature that this has that you don't get on the Limited. I'm going to keep it in 4 low. I am going to turn off my rear locker because I don't think it's really needed. Go ahead and turn that off. And now I'm going to engage the crawl control system, which will basically do the driving for me. It'll add both throttle and braking, though I have to handle the steering. And then I can go faster or slower based on this knob right there. So take my foot off the brake, and we just crawl forward. And this also adds in the MTS, which is a more advanced version of the A-Track traction system, to give me that like differential lock software version, both for front and rear axles. Now I could just turn on the rear locker here, but I know I just don't need it, so I'm not worried about it. And it's just managing, it's thinking, it's moving me forward. Now, this is especially good in like loose sand if you get stuck. This can actually dig out of loose sand, which is quite a feat. And down we go. Now it can go faster as well, so we'll dial that up and keep on moving. Right, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and turn off crawl control because again, just not that difficult of a course, so we can deactivate that. Go back to MTS. I don't know if you noticed it through the moguls, but maybe you'll notice it here. With the sway bar disconnect enabled, it'll actually give more articulation to the front wheels. And really the biggest benefit of that is less head toss because the vehicle is doing less of this as you're driving. But also it does increase reach on those front wheels, so they can do a little bit better at reaching down and grabbing things. This camera here, I have nice markers and grid lines, and I can see the sides. I can also change my angles if I want to. Take a look at some other things. Oh, there's this virtual look through the hood thing where I can see my wheels. Works better when you're pointing up. Yeah, there we go. So obviously, more capability is going to cost more money. Toyota's done a really good job of isolating certain features for certain vehicles. Now, would it be great to get everything in one? Well, yeah, you can. That's the Land Cruiser. Especially when you load it up money-wise, it can get rather expensive. So you got to decide, if you want to go with one of these vehicles or competition, whatever, you just need to decide what features are truly critical to you. Post a comment below and let's talk about it. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share videos. We make them for you, and I hope you enjoy them. We'll see you again right here real soon. And I'm going to drive this one home. Ha!